Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Journey Journals. My name is Gaia from Life of Gaia, and today we're going to be covering a very interesting topic, and it's that of Amanita Muscaria. And we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about this iconic mushroom. And I'm very, very excited to have an amazing guest with us today. His name is Rael, and he's a professional Amanita warrior who happens to have an absolute wealth of knowledge and a very unique perspective on this iconic and very mysterious mushroom. Together with Rael today, we're going to be exploring the rich history of Amanita muscaria, its cultural significance, its effects, and even its connection with some very, very surprising myths. So, a very warm welcome to you, Rael.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. Although I wouldn't say that I'm a professional Amanita warrior. I would say I'm a professional mushroom forager. That's probably a little more clear for people.
Thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. And I would love it if you could take a moment to please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you to this fascinating topic of Amanita muscaria.
Yeah. Well, I just had a life which basically destined me to find this mushroom because I had tried every single thing on earth to heal myself from insomnia and from PTSD and a number of problems that I had, and nothing worked. Everything in modern medicine failed. I tried medication and everything. After many years of that, I realized that nothing modern medicine had was really useful. And I ended up living in South America for a long time, where I just tried other alternative therapies to try to have a healthy, happy life. After many years, discovered Amanita muscaria, and when I discovered it, 2 weeks later, I never had insomnia ever again. In time, it eventually healed me from the other ailments that I had, and I found it to be the most amazing and wonderful healer that there is. So I took it on as my responsibility to share this with the world and let everyone know about it. Because when I discovered it, I was wandering through a forest in the middle of nowhere, and I don't think most people get the opportunity to find mushrooms that way.
It's an incredible background. And Rael, for those who aren't necessarily familiar with Amanita muscaria in general, would you mind describing exactly what it is, what it looks like, just giving a general description and maybe even some of the other names that it goes by?
Sure. So Amanita looks like this. It's a dehydrated Amanita mushroom, Amanita muscaria. They come with beautiful little white spots on them, and they just have a sort of a shape and sort of an elegance in the forest that's really captivating. And it's so captivating, in fact, that animals eat them as well. And I've seen when I'm foraging many animals who will just eat these things up just for fun, apparently. And they don't eat the ones that will kill them. So animals do have an interesting connection to this. And it's not a surprise because Amanita can only grow out of the root of a tree. It's impossible to cultivate it or grow it. So that makes it so that uh, it's a very pure essence, and it's very deeply connected with nature. It's connected with all of the plants in the forest through what is called a mycelial network.
Thank you. And the study of mushrooms, particularly as they come up in history, is of great interest to me. I've seen that Amanita tends to come up, it seems to pop up everywhere, including, in Norse mythology with the Vikings. I see it comes up in Siberian shamanism. Even in Hindu mythology, it's believed that the Soma could have potentially been Amanita muscaria. And then it comes up as, with Alice in Wonderland, in Native American myths, and even in alchemical and occult symbolism. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about the historical and cultural significance of Amanita across different civilizations and your thoughts on that.
Amanita is fascinating because it has found a way to insert itself into our culture without people even knowing what it is. We celebrate Christmas, and Amanita mushrooms, they must grow out of the root of a tree. This is referred to as a mycorrhizal connection. And one of the primary trees they grow out of is pine trees and Douglas fir trees, which are the types of trees you put in your house for Christmas. And so when you go to get your presents on Christmas morning, you're doing a similar practice as foraging, which is by looking under the tree, you get your present where the mushroom would be if you were in the forest. Okay. Additionally, To dry mushrooms, you have to put them into like stockings, for example. You can put them next to a fire. That's the way they used to do it, to dehydrate the mushrooms. Or you can tie them onto the branches of a tree outside, and as wind will blow, it will slowly dry them out over several days. That's another way to dry them, which is the same as ornaments. Um, Santa's colors are red and white. There's many more things I could talk about in terms of other religions. There was an ordained minister who studied the original writings of Christ, and in the original languages that they were written in, like there were these dead languages like Assyrian and Sumerian. He came to find that the original writings of Christ were just filled with code language about Amanita, and he wrote a book about it. It's called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. It's a very famous book these days. Uh, Hard to say exactly what the ultimate meanings are. There is no denying that this mushroom is deeply embedded in our culture. I didn't even mention Mario Brothers, which is the power up mushroom in Mario Brothers. It is extremely powerful. It understands life in a way that we don't, and it is able to influence us and sort of guide us in the right direction towards growth, whether we know it or not. So just as there is an NSA of the internet, which the mysterious and potentially evil group of people somewhere is watching over us, there is also a mycelial network under the ground, which you walk on top of, which can actually sort of track you in a similar way and knows everything about you and sees you all the time because it's a mycelium. It's connected to everything. So if you understand that it's there, and you know that it's there to help nature grow, then you understand how it might help you as a microdose.
It's fascinating, and the theory that connects Amanita Muscaria to Christmas traditions. And I was surprised to find literally hundreds of videos with millions of views about this theory and how it sort of originated from the Siberian shamans and how they used to pick them, and that the only way to deliver them into people's houses, because the houses were sort of surrounded by snow and the doorway was blocked, that they would put them through the roof or through the chimney. It's absolutely fascinating. So thank you for sharing that with us. So Amanita muscaria is obviously a psychedelic or psychoactive mushroom. What makes it different from regular psilocybin magic mushrooms?
Psilocybin is different because it activates the conscious mind, whereas Amanita activates the subconscious mind. When you take Amanita, a high dose, for example, the best way to compare is in a high dose, not as a microdose. So if you're doing a higher dose of Amanita, it will force you to sleep. And I should mention it's not very comfortable or pleasant to take a high dose. So don't go out and try it without doing microdosing first. But when you do a high dose Amanita, it will put you to sleep, and your experience is actually a lucid, vivid dream, which is with dreams that are extremely real, and they are experiences which can last for a long time, and they're very interesting and fascinating dreams. So this is really the source of the wisdom that it can give you, and that's the way it goes about it. It's a completely out of body experience. Whereas psilocybin, when you take psilocybin, you're still awake, you're still conscious, and you're going to be thinking about your problems here on the earth. So it's very much for increasing the capacity of your thinking and increasing your mind to make you better at handling it, I think, is the point of psilocybin. Whereas Amanita is basically just trying to align you with your superior purpose and align you with everything else in the best way possible. So it does that by removing the subconscious weight of your past memories and making them more easy to digest and handle, so that you still have your memories, but they're not traumatic anymore. And this is the main way that it will work on a person in that type of a setting, type of a self-growth setting.
That's fascinating, and it sounds like a significant difference. You mentioned microdosing. Could you speak a little bit more into that about, the benefits and how to use Amanita and what someone could expect from it?
Yeah, so with microdosing, a person should try it if they want some of the health benefits, especially the sleep benefits. If you're struggling to stay calm and relaxed in general, it's really, really good for that. Amanita makes you very centered when you take it as a microdose. It makes your mind very clear. And if you take it at night, it gives you this gentle sort of relaxation effect, which can help you to sleep. Some people take it during the day too, and you can function just fine. But it just makes you a bit relaxed, so it can help you get to sleep. When you're microdosing, the amazing thing about it is that it's actually impossible to get tolerance to mucimol, which is the active ingredient in Amanita. So after it's been prepared and foraged and it's been cooked properly, it's converted into mucimol, and that's the main thing that has an effect on you. And the mucimol itself will work to increase your body's neurogenesis, I should say, or its neurosynthesis. There isn't enough scientific research on this mushroom to show how this happens. But from what people report from taking it, people who have had Alzheimer's, people who have had Parkinson's, people that have had OCD, I had PTSD, versatile, and I know many people that have had it, people that have had benzo addictions. All of these people report improvements of their symptoms. It's able to alleviate the symptoms of illnesses for which there is no medicine, which means that from my perspective, I believe it is neurogenic. It means it causes neurogenesis. I think it's almost inarguable from what I've seen that that's what it causes, although there does need to be more scientific research on it.
Interesting. When you speak about microdosing, what sort of dosages are you looking at, and what are the best ways for a person to ingest it?
Yeah, so under 3 grams is microdose for Amanita. I understand that for 3 grams for psilocybin is usually like a regular ceremony dose. That's not the same for Amanita. A dose for Amanita for ceremony would be like upwards of 7 grams. So for microdosing, you keep it below this dosage. People just need to regulate the dosage based on their effects. As I said, you can't actually develop tolerance to Amanita. So that means that if you're taking it for a week, the effect is stronger on the 7th day than on the 1st day, assuming you took the same dose every day. If you want to get the dosaging right with Amanita, you really have to get in touch with yourself and how you're feeling when you take it, to sort of know how much you need, when you need it, what's the right amount for you and all that. The microdosing process of Amanita is also a process of getting to know yourself and your own body and what you need personally, which it helps you to do as well. It guides you through intuitions, through dreams, through synchronicities. It helps to guide you in the right path in life.
Are there any specific safety considerations with Amanita? For example, are there people who should not be taking it or trying it? And any safety considerations with regard to preparation methods or during or after?
Yeah, definitely. You should not combine it with alcohol, and you should not combine it with any type of psychiatric medication. You should not combine it with any type of opiate either, including kratom. Any of those 3 categories, in my opinion, are just off limits. You just never do it, especially psychiatric medications, which are kind of like the opposite of Amanita. They cause the mind to become nullified, like neutralized, so that you don't feel things and you're kind of cut off from your own perceptions. Whereas Amanita will expand your perceptions. So to take them at the same time is just nonsensical. The benefit of Amanita comes from allowing yourself to go through a healing process. And that means that you have to usually make sacrifices and put in some commitments, maybe to your diet or to your general lifestyle to increase your healing. And in order to make that happen, you have to be willing to start off by taking out the things that are causing some of the problems.
And I understand that psilocybin is basically illegal here in the United States, but I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Amanita is not illegal, or it's legal. Could you speak into that?
So Amanita is 100% legal. It's always been legal, and it's legal in most countries. I've shipped it internationally. I've even brought a barrel of it from Brazil back here on a plane. So it's definitely legal. The only issue with it is that people don't know what it is. If you Google it, it says that it's deadly, which is just patently false. There's no cases of a person consuming Amanita and then dropping dead. There are a few cases of people who force-fed themselves like raw Amanita out in the forest, which is very dangerous. And a couple of them did die because it would like force fed them. They throw up and they keep eating more. So like this is like really serious people who like really seriously wanted to hurt themselves on Amanita. It's very rare. It's like extraordinary. There's like 2 cases ever in the history of the earth of someone dying from Amanita. You have to be aware that dangerousness of it is extremely exaggerated. So much so to the point of like, they used to say cannabis would give you cancer. They used to say bizarre things about plant medicine. This mushroom, I find all the time animals have eaten it. When I go foraging, I see the remains of mushrooms that have been eaten by animals because they're so attracted to it. But they know not to eat the poisonous ones that will actually kill them. Those are never touched when I'm foraging. So somehow the animals know that this is what they're supposed to eat, but not to eat the other ones. And I've seen every type of mammal eat this. Squirrels, I've seen them carry into the trees and eat it. I've seen foxes eat them. Even birds scratching at them, eating it. Wide variety of animals will eat this. To say it's deadly is just false information. It's literally just lying.
How do you, when you foraging for them, differentiate between poisonous and non-poisonous?
I mean, just mushroom identification, but Amanita muscaria is very easy to identify. It's so distinct in how it looks that, it's pretty hard to miss.
Are there mushrooms that could look similar to it?
In the US, there's like maybe one that's reddish that does not have spots that sort of looks similar, but I believe it's a pretty neutral mushroom that's not harmful. It would be very difficult to misidentify because I mean, this is like really, really rare that it has white spots and is red. That's just really rare for
That's
mushrooms.
good to know. There are huge misconceptions around psychedelic mushrooms and psilocybin in general. What are some of the other myths and misconceptions that you've come across regarding Amanita?
The biggest one is that it is not effective or doesn't do anything. So a lot of people who have tried Amanita once or twice, maybe even for a couple of months, and not really seen much of an effect. And this is because there's a lot of issues preparing it that make it complicated. So to prepare Amanita correctly, you actually need to use the trees that it grows from to prepare it with. This was something I discovered several years into foraging. There was all of these arguments on the internet about how to prepare it correctly in the tiny, tiny circles of people who were interested in Amanita, which was like 2,000 people on Reddit were interested in it. There was a lot of misconceptions about how to make it. And people were using really, really strong acids. And some people were using like pressure cookers to like pour up 3 hours in a pressure cooker, putting this tiny little mushroom and like that. Like it's too much heat for it, doing strange things. And what I realized was that if you just take the pine needles off of the tree that it comes from, the pine needles, and you just boil them and you prepare it in a specific way, but you basically boil them, what you end up with is a liquid, which is a concentrate of vitamin C, which is the acid that it needs to decarbox to properly make it into mucimol. And also, it has a lot of analog chemicals, which help to balance and regulate the other things that are in the mushroom. So when you're consuming Amanita, you're not just consuming mucimol, you're consuming a whole range of other things. And so those things have an effect on your experience. And the right way to regulate them is by adding pine needle tea as the base of the drink. That's the best way to make it. That's how nature made it, right? That's how our ancestors would have done it. You just take the pine needles, you put the tea, you make the Amanita tea, and then you're ready to go. It's really that simple. This is the best way to go about taking it.
It sounds absolutely logical and it makes so much sense. It makes me think about, for example, ayahuasca and how it's the combination of the bark of the ayahuasca vine with the chacruna leaves that are boiled together, which in the Amazon, there are literally hundreds of thousands of plants. And to come across that exact combination and of boiling them together to then create this psychoactive brew, a lot of indigenous tribes say that it was the plants that communicated that to them. How did you come across this?
It's actually the same way. I understand that there are people in the world who don't think this is real, who think that plants are just material pieces of matter that don't have thoughts or feelings or consciousness. I get it. There's lots of people who think that there's nothing, that spirituality is totally fake and that God's not real and that when you die, you just stop existing. A lot of people think that. But the truth is that everything is conscious. I'm conscious, you're conscious, the rocks have consciousness, the water has consciousness. We're swimming in an ocean of consciousness, which means that everything gets a little bit of it. What that means for nature is that plants do actually have an experience. Are they able to communicate the experience to you? Maybe. It depends on if you can get in touch with it enough to sense it and sort of feel it. Learning to communicate in this with nature is what I'm talking about. Learning to do this is like learning a language. It takes a lot of time listening. So if you go into the forest for a long, long time and you listen quietly, eventually you will start to understand what I'm talking about. And indigenous people would automatically know this because that's what they do all the day long. They're all out looking for food, getting what they need in the forest quietly. So they would automatically develop these senses. To live a similar lifestyle, living in the woods and being in nature all the time, like I have, you end up developing sort of naturally sort of a similar connection and doing things and sensing things in a way that you didn't realize that this was a way in which nature was communicating to you. And then realizing after the fact, oh, I did this, this, and this happened. And it's because I had this feeling about doing something. And that feeling was actually a communication from, you see. So you start to piece it together like a language, like a child learning a language. You can piece together how your intuition works to eventually learn how to communicate with nature in this way.
I'm in 200% agreement with you in that regard. I've had my own personal experiences with communications with plants. It's been very, very specific and very profound. I highly encourage it, and I'm thrilled that it's starting to be backed by research. Even the communication between plants and different species. Rael, you've also made use of Amanita ceremonially. I wanted to ask you, what role does Amanita Muscaria play in spiritual or shamanic practices today? I mean, I know it has a huge and very rich history in shamanic practices, but what does that look like today?
It helps people find their spiritual path, which essentially means what your place is in life. It will find your purpose, maybe, or your life, your meaning for your life, something along these terms. So it helps you find the core foundation of what you're going to do and who you are. The way it helps you to do that is by bringing you in touch with something that is much deeper within yourself, to a deeper truth that's within yourself. So the fundamental way in which people on the earth have become deceived into believing that we're not connected with one another and not connected with nature by cutting you off from the method of truth finding that we're supposed to naturally have, which is found in here. This is how you find the truth. It's not done up here. By people living in this way, that's the opposite of how they're supposed to go about knowing things. Amanita, just like all plant medicines, will help a person connect to their spiritual path. Amanita does this in a very deep way. So it will bring a person back to connect with what they know to be true. And what I mean by that is that people have been misled into believing that truth comes from the outside. They think truth has to come from the government or from their school or from someone else. Whereas actually, the way that truth has always been recognized in previous times is in here. This is how you know if something is true. You feel it. When you've lived your life in a way that is not based off of your own internal truth, you're going to be way far from where you're supposed to be, what you should have, right? The happiness and the fulfillment and the well-being you're supposed to have, you're going to move away from it because you're moving away from your internal truth. And Amanita will basically just make it so that you can't really argue. Like you can turn away from the truth, but you can't argue that it is the truth the way that Amanita shows you. So it's just going to point it out like, hey, you do this, you get that. You do this, you get that. That's all. And it's just going to show this to you kind of as a guide as you go through your life to point you in the right direction, of a life that's going to make you more connected, more meaningful, more happy, and more, purposeful to help other people and to be a contributing part of the world.
The sense that I get from talking to you is that it's been absolutely instrumental in helping you find your purpose and walk your path and walk your truth. What has been the most fulfilling part for you about working with Amanita Muscaria, and how has it transformed your life and your perspective in general?
I would say the most fulfilling part of working with it is probably in being able to see a person change in their habits and their behaviors due to microdosing. Like speaking to someone, first they come to me and they're usually like have some problem, a lot of anxiety, and they're like, oh, I need to sleep more, I can't sleep. And so they find me out of like desperation in a lot of cases. And they'll on Instagram and they'll message me like all day long, oh, I have this and this and this. And okay, get them a tincture. And once I start taking my tincture, very quickly you'll see a shift in their thinking and their behavior. And when I speak to them later, just seeing how efficiently this impossible to solve problem was resolved and like how quickly, that's what I like to see. It is a fast and efficient solution that is permanent. In terms of products in general, they have a problem and then you offer a solution, right? The company does, and it delivers it. That's what I like to do.
Yeah, and that it seems to solve the problem with simplicity and with little to no side effects from what I've seen.
Yeah, so Amanita will only get side effects if you take too much. In the microdose, you're not going to get any side effects. We're saying like a half a gram up to 3 grams is microdose. Okay, depending on your body weight and your specifics will depend on your dosaging. The low doses, like I'm talking about, the worst possible side effect you'll get is cold sweats. That's the worst thing that will happen. You might get a little bit of an overactive thinking sometimes. Some people get this, or they get a little bit of wakefulness at night. Because as the Amanita is trying to open up the dream world, in some cases, because of things in diet and whatever in a person's life, they'll wake up at night and they won't fall asleep for a couple of hours instead of having a dream. Sometimes this happens when you take a little bit too much of the microdose. So then, okay, you just reduce the dosage, or you can take it in the morning and it still works.
I'm absolutely fascinated to understand more about this dream world that you keep making reference to. Would you mind speaking a little bit about it?
Our existence is not just physical. That needs to be stated more because people in this world have become so attached to this physical plane of existence, just this body, just this life, just the things that they like and have right now and they're familiar with from this life. They're so focused on these things that they think nothing else exists. When you're doing higher doses of Amanita and you have these experiences, which are out of body lucid dreams, you don't have a feeling of being on the earth anymore. You start to learn that's actually the way things are. Like you actually, when you die, you're going to continue existing. You're going to still have an experience somewhere else. With Amanita putting you into these dream experiences, it's showing you a different aspect of yourself, saying like, hey, this is what you believe in, and this scenario is happening because of X, Y, and Z. And you have to live through it as a dream. And you have to manage it and like come to terms with it, that experience when you wake up, right? You have to be able to adapt to it and learn from it on your own. And the reason that it does this is to show us like, hey, there's something else beyond this life that is worth putting effort into. And if you don't do it now, it's really hard to do it later. Just try to do it now while you're alive because it pays off. And it's just trying to show you like there is an afterlife. It shows you that there is one. And then it shows you, hey, your behavior determines where you're going to end up. If it's going to be better or worse or whatever it's going to be. And that's what it's trying to show everybody. And I think that's why it's so valuable as a healer.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it almost sounds like it's showing you the experience of something or the experience that you could have, and it's showing it through a lucid dream in a certain sense to give you the experience or show you the potential of that. Is that correct?
It's partially trying to teach you and also guide you towards what it knows is the right place for you to fit within human society. It knows how to do this because it's, as I said, like it's been around for hundreds of millions of years. It's seen all of our evolution as a species and every other species evolve, and it has seen it very intimately. So it knows how to organize living things. That's what it does. If you can find some trust in it and find the right ways to learn from it, to listen to it and learn from it, you can get so much out of it that your life will be completely different. What was possible for me before I took Amanita was thousands of times less than what I can do now after many years of using it because I'm so much more physically capable, mentally, emotionally. I'm spiritually stronger. Everything about me is more competent and better as a human being because I've done so much Amanita.
You're saying that this is all possible through like a microdosing protocol with Amanita, correct?
Yes, it's just microdosing and working on yourself.
And how long would one expect to take it for, or how often? Could you speak a little bit into that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what a person is going for. If you're going for shaman mode, like I'm doing, then you're going to want to do it as much as you can and in higher doses. And you got to do a strict diet and have a very strict lifestyle. You have to be very disciplined with your mind and the way you speak and what you do. You can take it to sort of this extreme, and that leads to the most rapid self-growth. So you make the biggest sacrifices, the biggest commitments, you get the most self-growth. But you can scale it, right? You can do less. If you're not comfortable with going, Rambo with God, then try a microdose and keep going to your day job. And that's fine. And you just sort of can feel out the experience and see like, hey, what works for me? What works for you? Right? What's going to work for your experience?
So for the average person who's maybe, has never had any experience before, is a little bit curious to try it out, is, starting to tread lightly, what would you suggest for that person?
I would say just try it and try it at the same time that you're microdosing. Definitely attempt to do at least one or two small life goals to accomplish during the time that you're microdosing and see how that change can occur within the microdose environment. So what am I suggesting? So like something like some project you'd like to get done, or some new habit you'd like to develop, or some habit you'd like to quit doing, something that you want to change about yourself, start the microdosing at the same time and see if that makes it easier to facilitate that change.
Sounds amazing. Rael, what is your message to the world?
People need to begin to find truth from within themselves, which is sometimes a difficult task for some people. The way you go about doing this is by starting off by acknowledging something that you know to a certainty is true, but that is not provable. Like, you can't openly demonstrate it to someone else, but you know to an absolute certainty that it is in fact true.
Could you give us an example?
Yeah, like you could say that human beings have the right to decide who we are. Do you have the right to self-define? Yes. If you don't use your right to self-define, then that's really your responsibility. That's really up to you, your choices. The process of discovering who you are and finding your purpose in life starts by discovering what you know to be true as inarguable. There are things that you know about life and that you know about yourself that are inarguable. Start with those things and make sure that you hold them within your heart and you hold them in your mind and your feelings all the time. Don't ever, ever let go of the deepest things that you know to be true, because this world is doing everything that it can to take the truth from you. So make sure that you hold on to it as strong as you can.
Thank you for that. And I want to say thank you for this interview. It has been an absolute pleasure for me. I have learned so much. The topic is absolutely fascinating. I want to acknowledge you and thank you for being on this interview with me, for sharing your knowledge, and for being a very, very powerful stand and standing in your deepest truth, because I really feel that when you take a stand like that, you sort of open up a pathway for other people to do the same and open up a clearing for other people to do the same. So thank you for being that for others.
Yeah, absolutely. I recognized that I was living in a world which was full of people that were very mechanical and not very human and not emotional, and there was not a lot of purpose to life. And I figured, well, what way can I bring more of that into the world? Well, I can try to be it. And so here I am, charging forward 5 years later, still working at it. And I think I have inspired some people to change over the years. And it really comes from people seeing a new way of life, right? They have to see that something is possible. They have to see someone else do it first before they would make the jump. So, I'm trying to break the 4 minute mile here, I guess.
Yeah, you're definitely inspiring me to count me in. I'm on board for this one. I wanted to thank you again for being on this interview. And for those of you who have been watching, if you've enjoyed the program, please like, share, comment. If you have any questions that we haven't covered in this interview, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I'm sure Rael would be happy to answer them. And also, for those of you who are watching this episode for the first time, we recorded another absolutely incredible interview with Rael about his work as a professional Amanita Muscaria forager. And I assure you, it's absolutely fascinating too. Stay tuned for the next episodes. And thank you so much to you again, Rael.
Thank you so much. We'll chat soon.